UFC 275, Glover Teixeira, Yuri Prochazka. Welcome to another UFC prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zhang, I go by Harris. As usual, fight-by-fight breakdowns and analysis from that betting perspective. We want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you hit the thumbs up on this video. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. For this UFC 275 event taking place in Singapore, we have a total of 12 fights. 7 of them are on the prelims. 5 of them are on the main card. So let's open it up with that first fight of the prelims. And for that fight, we're looking at Ramona Pascual taking on Joselyne Edwards. Women's featherweight fight here. Joselyne Edwards lost to Jessica Rose Clark. That was back in October. She's on a 2-fight losing streak at this point. Patient striker, not really active enough at times for me. Striking technique doesn't look the greatest. She does lack some striking speed as well. But I have seen good leg kicks out of her, good calf kicks. She can grapple, although I wouldn't really call her a grappling threat. Doesn't really have the best takedown defense either, which could be meaningful in this fight. Going up against Ramona Pascual, who lost her UFC debut to Josiane Nunes in February. She's a southpaw, looks very heavy on the feet. Looks like she has pretty good pressure though. Decent diversity with her striking. Punching technique, not quite the best. She is tough. She is willing to engage. She is able to land the takedown, at least from what we saw in her debut. I'll be honest, not too sure if that's a legitimate part of her game, but it is worth mentioning that she did land a takedown in all 3 rounds in her debut. Again, still lost the fight though. Joselyne Edwards is going up in weight for this one. This one's taking place at 145. Edwards typically has fought in the 135-pound division. But really, I'm having a tough time with this fight for a few reasons. Joselyne Edwards going up in weight, you'd think the advantage would be for Pascual, but she wasn't really able to handle the smaller Josiane Nunes in her last fight, who also went up in weight. Also, this fight is hard because, really neither fighter is that good, right? So very undecided on this one, but I do think Joselyne Edwards is the better talent between the two. I think she's the better striker between the two. And a little bit of an X factor, but I think she'll be the hungrier of the two, coming off of 2 losses and essentially looking to save her job. So I'm looking at Joselyne Edwards here. I just think Ramona Pascual not that good, neither fighter that good, but Joselyne Edwards a little bit better. So I'm going Joselyne Edwards to open the card up.
Yeah. This is a shaky fight because stylistically, I can see Ramona Pascual giving Joselyne Edwards issues with the grappling. Joselyne Edwards has horrible takedown defense, and she fights a bit green, but it looks like she's improving. It looks like she really enjoys the sport. She's gonna have a big striking advantage in this fight. I can see a situation where Pascual can get some takedowns here, but it's a matter of can Joselyne Edwards get back up, right? And she has shown that she is capable of getting back up. She kind of makes little adjustments to get back to her feet. But this is a tough fight to call. But what made me make my decision here, because I was leaning on Pascual, and then now I'm on Joselyne Edwards' side here. I like her competition a lot more than Ramona Pascual. Ramona Pascual, she hasn't, if you look at her record, who she's fought, it's really bad. And at least when you look at Joselyne Edwards, who she's fought, she at least has some fighters with winning records and some good records, 2 or 3 fights. Fights that she's won. And obviously Ramona Pascual has no win on her record, where the fighter actually has a decent record, right? So I'm going to lean towards Joselyne Edwards, but stylistically, this is a bad matchup for her because Pascual can get takedowns, and she has heart. She has heart, so even if she's tired, she'll still go for those takedowns. And again, as I mentioned, Edwards doesn't have the best takedown defense. But what I'm banking on is Edwards making improvements, being the far better striker, fighting the far better fighters. I think she should be more prepared than Pascual in this fight. So I'm going to lean towards Joselyne Edwards, but again, I wouldn't bet this fight.
All right, let's move on to the second fight. Another fight that I probably wouldn't bet either. We have Liang versus Silvana Gómez Juárez. For Juárez, she's on a 2-fight losing streak. She lost to Vanessa Demopoulos in January. She's introduced as a striker. The jab looks decent. She's primarily a boxer. She did drop Demopoulos with a solid overhand right in her last fight, so she is showing that she's capable on the feet. She's had issues with her opponent's aggressiveness, though. She's had issues with takedown defense and really just grappling as a whole, losing both of her UFC fights via armbar. Whereas Na Liang sort of relies on bringing the fight to the ground. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. For Na Liang, she lost her debut 14 months ago versus Ariane Carnelosi. If you remember that fight, it was an action-packed fight. Liang looked pretty good in that first round, even though it was a very high pace, and just got herself in a bad position that essentially ended the fight. She again has that ground heavy, grapple heavy type of attack. Doesn't really waste any time bringing the fight to the ground right away. She looks like a decent grappler as well. She looks knowledgeable on the ground. She uses her long frame to her advantage. We see in this one, she's going to have 2 inches in height, 2 inches in reach as well. We see that she has 19 professional wins. 11 of those 19 wins are via submission. Funny enough, I mentioned with Gómez Juárez losing both of her fights via armbar. For Na Liang, 6 of her 19 wins or 6 of her 11 submissions specifically are armbars. 2 of her 5 losses are via armbar, funny enough. But what that tells me is that she finds herself on the ground a lot, win, lose, or draw. And I think that ground approach essentially will be a problem for Silvana Gómez Juárez here. We know Liang, again, is very relentless with that ground approach. And I think her striking is at least serviceable. Whereas I think Juárez, who has, decent striking, let's call it at least average striking, has a terrible ground game. So I'm looking at Liang Na as the more well-rounded fighter, as the more clear path to victory here, and as somebody who can not quite, hold her own on the feet, but hold her own on the feet enough until she brings the fight to the mat, where she will have a huge advantage. So I'm going with the underdog on this one, Liang Na.
Yeah, this is another one of those fights you don't want to put any money on this on as far as betting goes. Na Liang is going to have that grappling advantage, big grappling advantage. But looking at her fights, she has a padded record here. Like some of these wins here, 0-0 fighters, 2-0, 2-2. Like these are the wins I'm talking about, and she doesn't have many good wins on her record. Now she did beat Liana Jojua back in 2016 when they were both starting out. So Luana obviously became a UFC fighter after. Now she's gonna be fighting an older fighter, 37, Juárez, who definitely has the better hands. Who's been in fights 3 rounds, has won unanimous decisions, has gone 3 rounds. When I look at Na Liang, she hasn't really gone the distance, right? So I'm kind of hesitant on this fight as far as how it's gonna go. It's for one, it's women's MMA. 2, we got this is low level. This is low level MMA. Na Liang is a specialist as far as the grappling. I can see her wrapping something up in the first round. But if she doesn't get that, I can see her having issues as the fight goes on. That being said, they are in Asia. I think Na Liang is going to come in ready for this fight. It's a close fight that can go either way, but I'm going to go with the underdog, Na Liang. But I think this is a tough spot that I can easily see her lose. Don't bet this fight.
Third fight, we have Kyung Kang versus Batgerel Danaa. For Kang, he lost to Rani Yaya in November. That was his first fight in 2 years at the time. Good movement, good footwork, good hands, decent jab, solid punches overall. Good level changes as well, good takedowns. We see his numbers there, over 2 per fight, and a pretty high accuracy, almost 60% on the accuracy side of things. Good top control. He makes positional improvements. He stays active. He's good at stopping his opponents from getting up. Doesn't really have the best takedown defense. However, doesn't really offer much off of his back either. So for somebody who can give it offensively with a ground game, can't quite take it from that perspective. For Batgeri Danaa, he lost to Chris Gutierrez in March. He has good fluid movement on the feet as a kickboxer, good hands to go along with it, good lateral movement, good fakes and feints, like the distance control. Again, I like the leg kicks, I like the combinations. He's technically sound, just speaking overall. Good striking skill set as well, like good striking diversity. 7 of his wins are via KO TKO, so we definitely have to respect his power as well. Not really the best at handling pressure though. I do think this fight will stay on the feet, and I think that, and I say it'll stay on the feet just looking at Kyung Ho Kang's style, right? Yes, he does have some takedown numbers to his game, but he's not somebody who's a relentless wrestler necessarily. So I think we're gonna find this fight on the feet for most of the fight. And I just think Batgerel Danaa offers more, a bit more power, a bit more striking diversity. I also think he'll be the hungrier of the two, to get back into the win column. Yes, both of them have lost, but Batgerel Danaa maybe just a little bit more relevant at this stage in their career. So I'm looking for Batgerel Danaa just to be the better fighter, because I do think this one will stay on the feet for the most part. Batgerel Danaa will be my pick.
Yeah, this is the third fight I'm going to say, like, this is not, I wouldn't bet this fight. Kang has never been knocked out. He's going to have a grappling advantage in this fight. His striking's okay. Batgerel, we know he has that power. He looks to knock you out early in fights, first, second round. It's a tough fight to call because as the fight goes on, Kang's going to be more live in this fight. And if he gets us to the mat, his grappling is no joke, right? So he's going to have a big grappling advantage if he can get it to the mat. And if he can get him down early in the first round, that's going to kind of take out a lot of the energy from Danaa Batgerel. So for me, it's a tough fight to choose here how you think the fight's going to go. Is Dana going to hurt him early in the fight? I'm going to lean towards that. Kang has never been knocked out, but he hasn't really fought in guys that have this power. This is serious power this guy has, right? So I think Danaa Batgerel is eventually going to connect here. I can see an early finish in this fight. But again, after the first round, second round, this fight's going to get stickier. So as far as betting goes, it's a really tough fight, but I'm going to roll with Danaa Batgerel.
All right, let's move on to the fourth fight. Coming off of the early prelims at this point, we're looking at Andre Fialho versus Jake Matthews. Matthews, 15 months since his last fight, he lost to Sean Brady March of last year. Solid stand-up, looks like he has good footwork, looks like he has good movement, good combinations. He controls center of the octagon. I've seen a good jab out of him. I think he's a pretty decent counter puncher as well, good pace on the feet as well. He does have a bit of a ground game, almost 2 takedowns per fight, over 40% on the accuracy side of things. And he's the BJJ black belt, though he doesn't really offer much off of his back, doesn't really have the best takedown defense, but he is somebody who's, capable otherwise, and otherwise just a pretty well-rounded fighter. Going up against Andre Fialho, who knocked out Cameron Van Camp, that was only last month. He's on a 2-fight win streak, so definitely looking to keep the streak going. For good power first and foremost. We see he has 16 wins there. 13 of them are via KO TKO. I've seen him fight out of both stances. He's good at staying in front of you. He's good at controlling the center of the octagon. Good in and out movement, good fakes, good feints, good head movement, pretty composed as well. He is relatively one-dimensional. In that, again, he's a striker. He's going to stay in front of you. He's going to look to strike with you. And on top of that one dimension, it's primarily hands at that. He is introduced as a boxer, so that doesn't really surprise me. But he's pretty good at that one dimension. Again, he has a lot of power, pretty good pressure, and he's somebody who is definitely a threat on the feet. I do like Fialho in this fight, and the reason why is because despite the numbers that Jake Matthews has in terms of his, takedowns and whatnot, he's not a ground specialist. He is somebody who does keep the fight on the feet, whereas he's capable of getting the takedown, as opposed to being a fighter who is going to actively look for a takedown. Although Jake is solid on the feet, I don't think he presents any kind of unique puzzle for Fialho to figure out. I think Matthews will be susceptible to being caught by a Fialho counterpunch. And again, Fialho has that power to make that counterpunch a fight-changing punch at any time. So I think, the UFC is giving Fialho a winnable opponent, a good opponent, a game opponent. The odds are close for a reason. But I think this works in Fialho's favor in that, Matthews is not necessarily a ground specialist or a grappling specialist or somebody who can really add a layer to the fight that Fialho is not going to be prepared for. So I'm going Andre Fialho on this one. A knockout would not surprise me either.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Fialho's been looking good, been knocking guys out. It's like I wouldn't be surprised Fialho comes out there, gets another victim in Jake Matthews, right? So it's a tough fight for Fialho as well. I think stylistically, Jake Matthews can give him some problems with the grappling. Jake Matthews is good with 3 rounds. He can go 3 rounds, and really fighters that have given Jake Matthews problems are guys that have that wrestling background, or they have some type of grappling background, and they could strike. All right, so normally those are the guys. If you look on his record, aside from I think his name Vic, Vic. What's that guy's name? James. Let me pull up his record here. Actually,
James Vick.
Yeah, James Vick. Let me see here. Yeah, James Vick. That's his first loss on his record. James Vick, right? That's the only guy that's not really wrestler based. Kevin Lee, Adam Holbrook, all have wrestling in their back pocket. Anthony Rocco Martin, he has some wrestling in his back pocket to defend. Sean Brady obviously has some wrestling as well. So I think he's fighting a guy that he can show out against. I think this is a fight that as the fight goes on, Fialho does not look that good in the 3rd round. That's one thing I noticed. Now in the 1st round, he looks amazing. And in this last fight against Cameron Van Camp, he got hurt in that fight. He got hurt. I had money on Fialho, and I was nervous at one point in that fight. Yes, Fialho showed the heart, came back, got the win. But that's Cameron Van Camp, if I'm saying his name correctly, right? So I think Jake Matthews is going to pull this off. I think Jake Matthews is going to show he's a vet. He's been in the UFC like so long, and so he's experienced. He's fought good guys, and I think if he can get this fight to the mat, he's going to get a lot of success that way. And even in the stand-up, I could see him catching Fialho. Fialho has his hands down. He's confident for a reason because he wants to draw you in and catch you with the check left or the check right. He has really good hooks, and he'll put you out, right? But having your hands down at this level, I think is a recipe for disaster. And I think Jake Matthews can land. So I'm going to go with Jake Matthews here to get back in the winning column here and to get the win. And don't forget, Jake Matthews, he had a good fight with Sean Brady. He just had issues with the wrestling or the grappling. But on the feet, he looked good. He looked pretty decent, right? Brady decided, I got to get this to the match. So Matthews is definitely dangerous in the striking. And in this fight where he's just fighting a boxer, albeit this boxer has really good power, I think Jake Matthews can get the win here. I think he's a more well-rounded guy. So I'm going to go Jake Matthews here as well. Has Jake Matthews ever been knocked out?
Let's take a look here.
No, this guy's never been knocked out, right? So all his losses are decisions. Well, he has a ground and pound loss to Kevin Lee. But as far as like getting knocked out on the feet, he's never been knocked out. So I like him here. I think he's going to be pretty tough to take some of those shots, let this fight get a bit longer, use some grappling. I think he can get the win. So I'm going to go with the underdog here, Jake Matthews.
All right, let's move on to the 5th fight. This is probably the toughest fight for me. We have Maheshate taking on Steve Garcia. Maheshate is a UFC newcomer. He won in Dana White Contender Series back in November. Looks pretty comfortable with the striking. Looks to be under control. He was touched a few times in his fight on the Dana White Contender Series. He was actually dropped as well. The key to those moments was that his opponent was pressuring him. His opponent was pushing pace. So that could be something that could be a problem going forward or sort of a blueprint to beating him. Doesn't really have the highest level of striking activity. He's more of a methodical, technical type of striker. Going up against Steve Garcia, who beat Charlie Ontiveros in October. Steve Garcia is a southpaw. on the feet. He has solid hands. He is introduced as a boxer. The jab is solid. He can put combinations together. We saw him wobble a few times in his last fight, though. It makes me wonder about his chin. He's never been knocked out before, though. In the 4 losses that he has, he does have a bit of a ground game. He did land a few takedowns in each of his 2 UFC fights, and small sample size, of course, but we see that's going to result in some takedown numbers, almost 2 per fight, almost 50% accuracy. This fight, again, I mentioned probably the hardest one for me. I don't think either fighter is trustworthy. Yes, this is in Singapore, so in some ways you have to lean towards the Asian fighter in Maheshate. But with Steve Garcia being a boxer and Maheshate being a striker, I do think one thing that I can rely on is that a lot of this fight will take place on the feet. We also know that, again, Steve Garcia can be hurt on the feet, and that's where it gets a little bit concerning. Garcia isn't the strongest wrestler, but I know that it can be a key part of his game that sets him over the top for me, and that sort of makes me lean towards him. He has that added layer, whereas although limited Maheshate footage, I haven't seen that layer included in his game. So maybe it's just something that I don't know. But I have to go based on what I do know and what I have seen. And what I have seen is that Steve Garcia is the slightly more well-rounded fighter, whereas I'm not quite getting the threat on the feet from Maheshate, whereas he's more of that technical point type of striker. So very reluctant pick on my end. I think this is a strong do not bet, especially when you see the odds. This should probably be a pick 'em, if anything. But I am going to go with Steve Garcia, reluctantly picking Steve Garcia on this fight.
Yeah, man, this is a tough one though. I like how you mentioned the Steve Garcia getting touched in his last fight against that Taekwondo guy. What was his name again? He got him with a couple. He got him with one of those axe kicks, and then he also got him with the hook. Both times had Garcia wobbling. Garcia eventually locked the takedowns against Charlie Ontiveros. Eventually got the takedown, and obviously ground and pounded him out. So in a sense, in that fight, he went to the grappling, right? So he was smart, right? So that's what I like to see with fighters. When you know that the next guy has an advantage in the striking, he went to where he's good at. And one thing, even though he got touched by Charlie's Ontiveros, watch that fight. Watch those strikes that he did. I think those strikes would put down anyone. This guy was throwing some really high level Taekwondo kicks that never land, and he actually landed it. So take what you want from that. Now, when I look at Maheshate, I'm going to talk about who he's been fighting who's on his record. And this guy's fighting super low level guys here. On the Contender Series, he fought a Canadian, Aquiles Estremadura, who's also fought shaky guys as well, but he has like maybe 1 or 2 guys on that record. But in that fight, when the first thing you notice in that fight is Maheshate was way bigger than this guy. So he was the bigger guy, marching him down. He lost the first round, actually. Maheshate lost that round. The second round, he was losing that round until the last minute because Maheshate was showing boxing all fight. And then the last minute of the second round, he throws a jumping knee. The guy was not expecting that, right? So, and then he just stole the round there. And then obviously in the third round, Maheshate won that round as well. So, but taking that fight, the second round, he was losing till the last minute, right? So I'm not sold on this guy because he was fighting a guy that wasn't really Aquiles Estremadura. Like, we're from Canada, so I know this guy, and he's pretty decent, but he's not UFC level. Like, he's not ready yet. Maybe in a couple years. But again, that guy's 30, but he's not ready yet. He hasn't fought anyone. He doesn't really have any good wins on his record, except Carson Frey, but that's not really a good win. So when you look at who Maheshate has fought, it's not even comparable to Steve Garcia. Plus the grappling advantage Harris mentioned. I'm going to roll Steve Garcia here. And in the stand-up, he's not bad, right? If he gets you hurt or even if he touches you, he's going to run on you, get you in the corner, throw elbows. He's very violent. He knows how to finish if he gets you hurt. These are things I like in fighters. So I'm going to go with Steve Garcia, who's a bit more proven or a lot more proven. Could be a close fight. Both guys are big featherweights, but I'm going to go with Steve Garcia to get it done.
Fight number 6, Seung Choi versus Josh Culibao. Tough fight here. Seung Choi sizable favorite at minus 240. He lost his last fight to Alex Caceres. That was back in October. In terms of his style, kind of a stalking style, kind of a pressuring style of stand up. Decent footwork, decent, in and out ability to get in and out of range. He does mix it up well, uses the jab well as a setup punch. He's going to enjoy almost a 2-inch reach advantage in this one. So let's see how that works with respect to his jab. He's aggressive in clinch situations. He's a Korean Muay Thai champion, so that's sort of self-explanatory in terms of what he's going to try to do in clinch situations. Definitely got to respect his power as well, especially when you look at his last fight. 6 of his 10 wins also are via KO TKO. His last fight, of course, did reveal that he might not be the best at defending submissions. He shouldn't have let Alex Caceres win that fight, but you hope that it is something that he has learned from, as somebody who at least I saw as a potential contender in this featherweight division. Either way, going up against Joshua Culibao, just over a year since he last competed, he beat Shayilan Beke back in May 2021. Solid stand-up. He does mix it up well. Good striking diversity, decent calf kick, decent movement. He does have a solid clinch, some wrestling, some body locks. He knows how to keep you pressured against the cage. He has a BJJ black. I don't know if he has a black belt, but I know he has a background in BJJ as well. Just an overall pretty well-rounded fighter. But here's the thing with Culibao. Again, he's probably the more well-rounded fighter. He definitely has a more reliable ground game, but at least in terms of the 3 UFC fights that he's had so far, it's not something that he has resorted to. Rather he likes to keep the fight on the feet. We're going to be in front of a crowd. He's going to want to be, all action from that perspective. Though Culibao might be the more diverse striker, I do feel Seung Choi is a lot sharper on the feet, a lot more dangerous on the feet. And again, I don't see Culibao game planning to constantly go to the ground on this one. I think he's going to look similar to how he's looked in the 3 UFC fights he's had to date, which is fights that remain on the feet. So I think it stays on the feet. I think Choi is going to outperform, and I think Choi is going to get back into the win column. Seung Choi is my pick.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I'm with Seung Choi. However, I think this is a close matchup, but I like his striking in this fight. He's shown me that he can defend takedowns. If you look at that Yusuf Zalal fight, and he's a big guy, man. He's a big guy in the ring for this division. So I like him in this spot. I just think he's a more high-level striker. And for Culibao to wrestle 3 rounds, you got to have a certain type of cardio to do that. And I don't see Culibao resorting to that. I think he is confident in his own striking. I just think Seung Choi has more tools in the striking area. So I'm going to go Seung Choi here to get this one done.
Fight number 7, final fight of the prelims as well. We have a good one: Brendan Allen versus Jacob Malkoun. Brendan Allen beat Sam Alvey in February. If you recall that fight, it was a last-minute fight for Brendan Allen. It was in the light heavyweight division. Taking on Sam Alvey. I think he was supposed to take on Chris Curtis originally in that fight, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, for Brendan Allen, very well-rounded fighter. I mean, we sort of know him at this point. We've reviewed him a number of times. He continues to improve as a striker. His striking does look more technically sound to me, fight over fight. Of course, we know his ability to pressure and be explosive, but now he takes his time on his feet a little bit more. Again, he's a little bit more technically sound. He has good kicks. He mixes them up well. Crisp, clean hands at this point as well. Still hittable, but nonetheless, better stand up. We know his grappling ability, I should say. We know his wrestling ability as well. Good on top. He's good at using a mix of his grappling ability along with ground and pound. Again, just a really good, well-rounded fighter here. Going up against Jacob Malkoun, who had a UD win, a good win in that over AJ Dobson in February. He's looked good over his last couple of fights. Interesting with Jacob Malkoun, he's a wrestler first type of fighter. Takedown entries are solid, good chain wrestling, good grappling. On the feet, he's serviceable, is probably the best I can mention. Good amount of jabs, good pressure. He'll use combinations to try to open up those takedown attempts. He also has that nonstop wrestling cardio. He hasn't shown any signs of slowing down in his fights, but I'll keep it short. I do like Brendan Allen all day here. For as game as Malkoun is, as we saw in Malkoun's last fight, when he's forced to stand up against the fighter with stand up, he can be outclassed. He's going to have to rely on the one dimension he has, which is that wrestling. But for what it's worth, Brendan Allen not only has wrestling, but also grappling of his own, right? So he might be able to, maybe not completely, but for the most part, nullify the one strength that Jacob Malkoun has. And again, I'm expecting Brendan Allen to be too well rounded here. I'm expecting there to be too much of a discrepancy in the striking. And I'm expecting Brendan Allen to get the job done here. So Brendan Allen is going to be my pick.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Brendan Allen's my pick here. I just think that he's the better striker. He has a pretty sizable striking advantage. Plus, he's a really big middleweight. And Jacob Malkoun's going to look to grapple. I think they're both going to have success in grappling at certain points. And I think Malkoun having success against Dobson and Azak Hassan is a bit different versus Brendan Allen. Those guys are not necessarily the best grapplers. And obviously, they don't have the best cardio. And Brendan Allen has grappling tools. He's probably the better BJJ jiu-jitsu fighter. So you might have the advantage on the mat. Well, those guys had no grappling really, as far as and their cardio was not great either, right? So I think this is a different fight. I think Malkoun's gonna have issues with the size as well as the striking. Getting it to the mat consistently is not going to be easy. So I like Brendan Allen here to get another win here.
All right, let's take it off of the prelims. Let's move on to the main card. Again, 5 fights taking place on the main card. Let's start with fight number 1. Jack Della Maddalena versus Ramazan Emeev. Maddalena won his debut versus Pete Rodriguez in January. He's now on an 11-fight win streak since losing his first 2 fights of his professional career. The striking looks clean, a really good jab, solid combinations as well. The movement is pretty clean. He can switch stance, good in and out movement, good usage of that jab again, good striking IQ. And he has a judo background. He also used to play rugby. So, that'll speak to some of his toughness, some of his clinch, some of his potential takedown situations as well. Of course, going up against Ramazan Emeev, Dagestani wrestler here. He had a split decision loss versus Danny Roberts in October. Good movement, good takedowns, good striking to set up those takedowns. Unsurprisingly, good chain wrestling to go along with it. Again, he has that Dagestani style where, he can smother you with the wrestling. Sometimes he telegraphs his takedown attempts, though. And I think that's probably his biggest weakness with his wrestling approach. He is willing to shoot from far distances, sometimes making it, fairly easy to sprawl. We saw what Danny Roberts was able to do, in that fight. In their fight that they had. When this fight was announced, I was sort of on the side of Emeev when I initially started. I remember when I reviewed Jack Della in his first fight, I kind of said I don't really see that it factor. I don't know if I see it yet, but like I said, I was Emeev all day on this one. But as I analyze it further, I anticipate Maddalena's jab specifically on the feet to really throw off Emeev's timing. Ramazan Emeev needs time on the feet to show what he can do. He needs a slower pace. And, to that point, I don't think Jack Della is going to agree with that. I think he's going to throw a regular jab, a consistent jab, I should say. And I do think Maddalena might be better on the feet. Emeev might have the better wrestling. He is Dagestani, of course. But my problem with Emeev's wrestling is that, again, his shots are telegraphed. And especially in his last fight, he was having a really hard time holding Danny Roberts down. Danny Roberts is not someone who is a ground specialist. It's almost as if he lacks the physical strength that's required for the style that he wants to present. That tells me that I can't really expect Emeev to lay and pray for 3 rounds. And again, as a result, I like Jack Della here. Emeev, again, sneaking up there in age. I think he's 35 years old at this point. And I think Maddalena would just be the younger, stronger, faster, more active fighter with the better striking and the ability to stuff Ramazan Emeev's takedowns. So I'm going with Jack Della Maddalena here. Good win for the resume and sort of announce him in this welterweight division.
Yeah, I'm on Jack all day here, man. One thing about this fight with Emeev is his fighting style of holding. He's probably the best at holding you against the cage. And he kind of holds you against the cage, and he's trying to get control that way, and he's going to try to win rounds that way. But judges lately haven't been putting any credit into that. A lot of fighters are losing fights where they even have that control, right? If you look at the Holly Holm fight, that's one big example, right? So Jack Della Maddalena has really good boxing. He's going to have a sizable advantage on the feet. And I actually think he's going to stuff some of these takedowns and just win the rounds. I think he's just going to win the rounds with the better striking. Emeev is hard to put out. I can see this going 3 rounds, but I don't think Emeev's going to get that success where he's just going to be able to hold the guy down for 3 rounds. Maybe early, but as the fight goes on, Maddalena has wrestling, has grappling, albeit not at the level of Emeev, but he's going to add some resistance to these takedowns. And on the feet, Maddalena has really, really good boxing, and I like him in this spot. So I'm going to go Maddalena here to get this done.
Moving on to the second fight of the main card, we have Rogério Bontorin versus Manel Kape. Bontorin split decision loss to Brandon Royval back in January. Decent boxing, has some good speed, good pop. He's an opportunistic puncher. He's going to wait for that counterpunch opportunity. You can definitely outstrike him, though. Good strong clinch. He's physically strong. Uses that strength to land takedowns. And on top of that, he's a BJJ black belt. We see his takedown numbers there, almost 3 per fight, almost 60% accuracy. Black belt on top of that, good on top, controls you. He can keep you on the ground, has some ground and pound to go along with it. If he's taken down, decent guard for submission attempts, he can strike off of his back. He can intelligently look to get back up as well. So again, unsurprisingly, flyweight fighter who's very well-rounded, Rogério Bontorin. Going up against Manel Kape, who's on a 2-fight winning streak. He beat Jalgas Jumagulov in December. Finally starting to find his footing in the UFC now. He's a southpaw on the feet, good striking speed, good striking accuracy, great timing, good striking IQ, good counter-punching as well. He can also switch stance. He has good in and out movement. He'll use the feints, he'll use the fakes, he'll use the level changes. Pretty explosive as well. He can use that explosiveness to shoot for takedowns when he needs to, but definitely someone who is much more likely to keep it on the feet, I should say. Definitely want to exercise caution in this fight. I think this is the quote unquote trap fight of the card. We see Manel Kape as a sizable favorite. I think he was 89% on Tapology the last time I checked. Let's see what that number is looking like right now. 90% at this point. But you definitely have to be very careful with this fight. Kape to me is the much better striker. He's quicker, more striking diversity, more fluid. Stylistically, I can see him controlling center, which will serve well in the eyes of the judges. I have no doubt that he'll win the striking battle between these two. But here's the thing, though Manel Kape is now finding his footing in the UFC, he's 2-2 overall, but of course the 2 wins in a row. Hasn't beat anyone in the UFC that's on Rogério Bontorin's level. Bontorin can and will use takedowns. We saw Mateus Nicolau successfully land a couple of takedowns on Manel Kape. Kape was able to get back up, but Bontorin has better top control than Nicolau. He's physically stronger than Nicolau. And don't forget, Nicolau won that fight, right? And he won that fight, even though it was potentially an arguable decision. He won that fight by sealing round 1 with takedowns. Analytically, this fight might be a dog or a pass type of situation, because I definitely think there's good value on the side of Rogério Bontorin. That said, I'm actually siding with Manel Kape for the winner of this fight. I think he probably won that Nicolau fight despite the round 1 takedowns, even though the judges didn't agree, of course. And I think his takedown defense overall is decent, right? I think his cardio will hold up. And again, I think there's a huge discrepancy in the striking, and that's primarily, the benefit of his that I'm relying on. I do feel comfortable in picking him. I don't feel comfortable in betting on him, in adding him to any parlays, or to recommend betting on him. But in terms of picking him, I do feel okay. I think he will sort of continue his hot streak in the UFC. And it's evident that they're trying to push his name and they're sort of feeding him to the wolves right away to see if he can prove himself. And I think he will. So Manel Kape will be my pick.
Yeah, man. Manel Kape all day here. Rogério Bontorin, as you indicated, has those advantages with the grappling. But the striking, that's where he's going to get hurt here. And Manel Kape looked really good versus Almas Zumagulov. And Matthias Nicolau, that's a close fight that could have won either way. I thought Nicolau won, but a lot of people have Kape winning, and I totally understand. It's a really close fight as far as how the fight went. And I have Nicolau as a much better fighter than Rogério Bontorin, right? So I see Manel Kape just going in there, doing what he wants. If Rogério gets him down, I can see him getting back up to his feet. Or it just being a one-round thing, but as the fight goes on, I don't know if Bontorin's gonna be able to handle the power, the striking. This is only the what division? The 125-pound division.
Yep.
And Kape has power, man, like a lightweight, right? So I could see Kape eventually putting this guy out. So I'm gonna go Manel Kape. I'm pretty sure he gets this done here. I like him in this spot.
Third fight of the main card, rematch of a classic. We have Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Of course, a rematch of their 2020 classic. Zhang Weili won that fight via split decision. Again, very close matchup in that one. In that fight, the bigger striker with more power in Zhang Weili was the difference maker. I think this fight is going to look very similar to their last fight. I am expecting a high-level kickboxing match. The rematch is, 3 rounds as opposed to a 5-rounder. And I think that has an impact. I think, Zhang Weili, it's important to mention, she gassed a little bit, although she didn't fully slow down. She did gas a little bit towards like the middle of round 3. So you got to ask yourself, shorter fight, does this actually benefit Zhang Weili? In their first fight, I thought Joanna won rounds 3 and 4. I thought round 5 was close. And I think that's important to mention because even though that fight was close from top to bottom, it showed me that Joanna was able to make adjustments to be better in those rounds. Weili, since that fight, 2 losses in a row to Rose Namajunas. I don't want to put too much value on those losses. I mean, she's still the cream of the crop, still at the highest level in this women's strawweight division. Joanna Jędrzejczyk hasn't fought since that fight. She did just sign a long-term 6-fight deal. She says it may be her last, of course, a pretty long fight deal. She says she feels, kind of a second wind. She says she feels, mentally and physically sharper than she's ever been. She said she wants to prove why she's one of the greatest ever in the division. And she actually called for this fight. I think this fight was supposed to happen earlier, but I think Weili was maybe recovering from injuries, if I'm not mistaken. So this is something that Joanna has wanted for a little while now. And I think I'm buying into Joanna's mentality here. I think time off is good for her. I think she's going to come into this fight more refreshed. I feel like we're going to see unexpected improvements, at least stylistically, for this matchup. And I also think if this fight is close, this is almost conspiracy talk at this point. I think the judges will lean in favor of Joanna Jędrzejczyk with the idea of selling a trilogy. So I know they're in Singapore. I know that should favor the Asian fighter in Zhang Weili, but I'm thinking a 50-50 fight leans in favor of Joanna. And I think this very much could be a 50-50 fight. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is going to be my pick. It is more of a gut pick. I wouldn't recommend betting on it. It's a very tough fight. It could go either way, and you can make a case for either fighter. But my gut says Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
Yeah, this is a good fight. I actually want to see the rematch here. This fight has big implications here on what happens to the winner after this fight. Dana White came out today and said that Rose Namajunas is not fighting Torres. What's the name again? No, what's the name again? The champion. That's how unimpressed. That's how unimpressed I am with the champion. What's the champion's name again? The takedown girl.
I completely forgot now.
Okay, so
Carla Esparza.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. You know, I know everyone, but like, yeah, she wasn't impressive. But so anyway, so Dana White said that the winner of this fight, Rose is not getting the rematch, and the winner of this fight is going to be fighting the champion for the title. So now the storyline: Joanna, when Carla Esparza won the title after the Ultimate Fighter, her first defense was against Joanna, I believe, and she lost that fight, right? So this could be history rewritten, right? So Joanna can do the exact same thing she did before to get the title. Or Weili Zhang's going to come out here and get her title back, right? And obviously, or not get her title back, but get that opportunity to get her title back in a fight that I think she would win against Carla Esparza. This is a tough fight because when you look at both fighters, Joanna appears to be the more technical striker. Weili Zhang is technical too, but she has the power and the wrestling, right? 3 rounds, this is going to benefit Weili Zhang. She might want to implement more grappling in this fight. Joanna has amazing takedown defense, but Weili Zhang is going to have the grappling advantage here. They're in Singapore. I think a close fight. They're going to go Weili Zhang's way. It's a hard fight for me to pick. I don't know how anyone can be confident here in this fight. They both got knocked out by Rose Namajunas, and in the rematch, they both lost a close decision to Namajunas, right? So there's really nothing. They're not giving you nothing as far as, and you haven't seen Joanna fight in a couple of years or so. So they're not really providing you much information. I just don't think Weili Zhang's going to go on a 3-fight losing streak here. And I think she's going to get it done here. I think she's going to squeak out maybe a controversial win, but I can see her winning 2 rounds in this fight.
Fight number 4 of the main card and the co-main event, we have Valentina Shevchenko versus Taila Santos. Historically, I haven't taken too much time in analyzing Valentina Shevchenko fights. We know who she is at this point. We know she can do it all. We know she's the best in the division. We know she can do it all. She's been a dominant champion, and she's been outclassing all of her opponents. We know her striking is world class. We know she has the takedown ability when she goes for it, and the numbers are very respectable, almost 65% from an accuracy side of things, and almost 3 takedowns per fight. She has good top control. Cardio's not a concern. We know she's been 5 rounds many times, and she's been in the 5th round many times, so not concerned about her cardio at all. Going up against Taila Santos, 4-fight win streak. She beat Joanne Wood in November. She throws a lot into the strikes, good stand-up, good boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, good stiff jab, good hooking combinations, powerful knees to the body as well. Strong Thai clinch, really good takedowns too. Really strong on top, good takedown defense as well. I have seen her slow down a bit in her fights, but outside of that Joanne Wood fight, since that was a 1-round fight, her cardio did look a little bit improved, at least in a 3-round setting. I'm curious to see how that's going to look in a 5-round setting. I think this is definitely Valentina Shevchenko's most dangerous challenge in a while, but I can't shy away from being Shevchenko all the way on this one. And the main reason for that is because you look at Taila Santos's last fight versus Joanne Wood. Joanne Wood was outstriking her, until she got clipped. And that tells me not to worry about Shevchenko facing too much of an issue on the feet. She's much better than Joanne Wood in terms of striking. I don't think she'll put herself in that situation to be clipped. Obviously, anything can happen. It still is a fight. Santos, yes, she can use her physicality and possibly take the game to the ground. However, especially in a 5-round setting, I don't think she has the ability to maintain that. Even if she lands takedowns for 2 rounds and scores them both, there's no way I can see her doing that in rounds 3, 4, and 5. And I don't see that happening in rounds 1 and 2 either. But, essentially, although I can see value in Taila Santos, big underdog, dangerous, big striker, I think it's more of an imagine if she actually won, as opposed to her having a real shot at winning. So I'm looking at Valentina Shevchenko all day on this one. I get why the odds are the way that they are. I mean, she's the greatest flyweight ever in terms of women's MMA. So Valentina Shevchenko is going to be my pick.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I'm on the Talia Santos side. I'm gonna call an upset. I know this is crazy. I know a lot of people are gonna say I'm crazy for this, and I probably am. But I think this is a spot that she could win the fight. I think Amanda Nunes got 2 takedowns against Shevchenko. Talia Santos, in my opinion, is has technically better takedowns than Amanda Nunes. Like as far as technique goes, and as far as the jiu-jitsu goes, is arguably the better jiu-jitsu fighter. She is the better jiu-jitsu fighter as far as skills go. She's going to be able to hold her own in the feet, I think. I know it's a 5-round fight, but these Brazilian fighters, man, these guys, you put them in the position here, they go on these win streaks, and we look at the fight they lost in, or the other fight they lost in, and we're like, this guy's not going to win this fight. Like Charles Oliveira, this guy's not going to win the fight. And then these guys, these Brazilians, like they just get better and better and better. And even though Talia Santos has that loss on her record against Barella in the UFC, I think she's going to come ready here. I think she can utilize some takedowns. As far as the striking goes, Valentina is going to be in for a surprise in a sense that she hasn't really fought in that good fighters like Matt Harris. Look at her last couple of wins. Right, there's not really much there as far as but again, it's not her fault. That's all they have to offer her. Lauren Murphy, scrub. Jessica Andrade, that's a good one, but again, she's small. Jennifer Maya, like she just lost to a newcomer in whatever that newcomer's name is. Caitlin Chukagian, decision machine. But that's a good win. Liz Carmouche, Jessica I, those are scrubs, right? So Joanna Young Jakic was in the wrong division. So I just think that this is a opponent that's way better than what she's been facing. And she's gonna be fighting someone that's gonna be bigger than her, is ready for the striking, and she just needs a body lock to get it to the mat. I think she's the better grappler. I really do think she's the better grappler than Shevchenko. I know I might get a lot of people disagreeing. That's okay. We're gonna find out. I mean, I'm gonna make a risky pick here. I'm gonna go Talia Santos to get the win here, and new champ. So I'm gonna go Talia Santos.
All right, let's see what happens in that one as we move on to our main event of the evening, Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prochazka. For Glover Teixeira, he beat Jan Blachowicz. That was back in October, of course, to become the champion. Solid striking, but he is hittable. Seems to get wobbled often as well. I will say his striking has looked cleaner, especially when I think back to that Blachowicz fight. Looks a little bit more technical, but of course we know his strength, high level ability on the ground. Good at finding takedowns, and even good at finding takedowns when he's hurt. Good at surviving. Good on top, good positional improvements, good at staying on top. Good ground and pound. Of course, he can find that submission as well. Over one submission, attempted per fight. Very legitimate ground threat going up against a very legitimate striking threat in Yuri Prochazka. Over a year since his last fight, he beat Dominic Reyes May 2021. Yuri Prochazka has a Muay Thai and karate background, so very awkward fighter. Switch stance fighter, keeps his hands down. He's going to use length on his jabs. He's a long range striker. He has good distance control, and I think that's kind of the main thing that a lot of people are calling for here. Yes, Glover can land the takedown, but a lot of people think, 4-inch reach advantage for Yuri, 1 inch in height only, but more so his long striking style, a lot of people think will, keep him protected here. Of course, Yuri presents some legitimate challenges. Definitely understand why he's the favorite in this fight. He's the bigger striker. And that alone is a huge benefit. We've mentioned, as I mentioned, Glover Teixeira has been wobbled. A lot of people think Yuri Prochazka by KO. I definitely can see that being a possibility, but I'm actually going to go with Glover Teixeira on this one. I've seen Dominic Reyes land the takedown on Yuri Prochazka. Yes, Prochazka was able to get back up, but that sort of tells me everything I need to know about his takedown defense. I also think about Teixeira's striking. He is working with the right people, of course. I think about Alex Pereira, obviously. Working with the right people in this camp. I think he's going to have that game plan to strike just enough, use that head movement a lot to work his way in, to close the distance, to shoot for the takedown, to land the takedown, and then either to win the round or to be a threat to land that submission. Yuri's definitely a power threat. Teixeira is old. We've seen Teixeira knocked out in the past. We've seen him wobbled many times. But in that big puncher versus better overall fighter situation, I like going with the better overall fighter more times than not. And in my opinion, the better overall fighter usually comes out on top. I think despite the age, I hate when I see a fighter in his prime in Yuri Prochazka, 28 years old, taking on a fighter in their 40s. That usually kind of tells you exactly which direction you need to go in. But again, I think Glover Teixeira is the better overall fighter here. I think Glover Teixeira is a legitimate threat on the ground, and in a 5-round fight versus a fighter without the best takedown defense, at any point in time, this fight could hit the ground. So Glover Teixeira is going to be my pick. I'm going with the underdog to keep his title and to continue his reign.
Yeah, this is a crazy fight. We have the champion as the underdog here. Yuri Prochazka has that aura, that touch of death. Everyone thinks if he touches you, you're going down, right? So Glover Teixeira has to be ready to eat some shots here, because he's gonna have to go through some shots to get the takedown. Man, I'm seeing a Glover Teixeira ground and pound. So I'm going Glover to get this fight. He has the grappling advantage in this fight. And let's not forget, before he went to the grappling in his past fights or so, he was known as a striker first in the UFC. He was knocking people out. And he had Jan Blachowicz hurt in that fight. And technically, Jan Blachowicz has better technical striking as far as keeping their hands up defensively, the footwork. I like Yuri as far as he has good footwork as well. Yuri has good leg kicks. He's gonna have a good jab. He's gonna have the reach advantage. But I can see Teixeira getting under the reach, getting this to the mat, trying to get the submission. But I can see him getting some ground and pound going and finishing the fight. These light heavyweights hit hard. I'm gonna go Glover Teixeira as well. Pull it off, underdog.
All right, let's take it to Vegas. In that case, let's consider the entire card, of course, main card and prelims. We can sort of go in either direction. And let's start with some underdog chatter. Which underdog do you feel maybe has the best shot at winning their respective fight?
Yeah, who are the underdogs? Like, if you can go through them, I don't have it up here.
Absolutely. We got Ramazan Emeev. We got Rogério Bontorin. We got Joanna Jędrzejczyk. We got Tyler Santos. We got Glover Teixeira. Of course, that's the main card. Prelims, we have we have Ramona Pascual. We have Liang. We have Kang Kyung Ho, Jake Matthews, Maheshate, Joshua Culibao, and Jacob Malkoun.
Okay, I'm looking at Jake Matthews or Glover. I'm gonna go with Glover Teixeira.
All right, Glover Teixeira. I'm going to echo that. So that's going to be my underdog pick as well. Glover Teixeira to get the job done, to retain his title. And then, so he's a plus 164, of course. $100 will get a profit of $164. $250 will get a profit of $410. And then in terms of any kind of parlay action, what fights are you considering?
All right, I'm going with Manel Kape. Manel Kape. This is a tough one, but I'm going to go with, I just got the feeling here, Seung Choi.
Yeah, you got it.
Brendan Allen.
Seung Choi, Brendan Allen.
And I want to add in Jack Della Maddalena, but I'm not going to do it. So I'm going to go with those three.
All right, so those three fights would be a plus 156. $100 will get a profit of $156. $250 will get a profit of $390. In terms of the picks that I am looking at Brendan Allen as well. I am taking a look at, I know you said little hesitant to add him on yours, but I am going to add him on mine. Jack Della Maddalena. And I know you called upset, but I can't go against Valentina Shevchenko. So those 3 fights would be a plus 139. $100 will have a profit of $139, whereas a $250 bet will have a profit of $348. Tough card. This event is in Singapore. I believe it's an early event, so make sure you get your bets in early. But most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. We want to hear how you feel about our picks. Who is your underdog picks? What parlays are you considering? Let's have all of that in the comments below. In the meantime, make sure you press the thumbs up on this video. And most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Officially signing off for UFC 275, Teixeira versus Prochazka. He goes by Zhang. I go by Harris. We are Boxing MMA Picks. And in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's do it.